Our minds are constantly navigating a world of endless notifications and many pressures. We search for peace in modern solutions, yet the most powerful blueprint for mental strength might be almost 2,000 years old. The Roman thinker Seneca faced his own time of uncertainty and change, and he left behind a series of personal letters that are far more than old philosophy. They are a practical guide for building an unshakable mind. As Seneca himself wrote, "A mind thus grounded is a fortress without a wall." This journey through his letters will reveal the exact principles you can use to construct your own inner strength. You will learn how to transform your relationship with worry, longing, and life's challenges. What does it truly take to build a mind that fortune cannot break? Seneca's first lesson reveals that our only true power lies in a single, critical distinction. He teaches us to separate everything we experience into two clear categories: what is within our control and what is not. Our own judgments, our values, and our reactions, these are our domain. External events, the opinions of others, and past circumstances, these are not. This is the bedrock of Stoic practice, the foundation for that unshakable mind. It is the ultimate antidote to the modern feeling of being overwhelmed by a chaotic world. We spend so much energy trying to manage the uncontrollable noise outside, while neglecting the quiet authority we hold within. Seneca wrote that the soul is an unbreachable fortress when it retreats into itself. No outside force can touch your core judgments unless you grant it entry. Think of the last time you received challenging or critical feedback. The other person's words and their opinion were entirely outside your control. But your internal processing, your decision to see it as a personal challenge or as useful information that was yours to command. You cannot stop the critic, but you can choose whether their words become a source of inner turmoil. This is the practice of building your inner strength, brick by conscious brick. So bring to mind one recent event that disturbed your peace. It could be a traffic delay, a stressful message, a plan that fell apart. Now, within that entire situation, identify the one part that was truly, authentically yours to direct. It is in that small, focused space that your resilience is born. What if your first reaction to difficult news was not the problem, but what you do next was everything? Seneca offers a profound insight into the nature of our feelings, describing these initial jolts not as failures, but as involuntary reflexes. He called them the first movements, a sudden startle at a loud noise or a quick surge of frustration at an interruption. These are not the emotion itself, but its raw, untamed spark. The true power of a resilient mind lies in the critical gap between that initial spark and your eventual action. Seneca writes that anger, for instance, is a brief, manageable motion that we can choose to release before it grows. It is the difference between feeling a flash of heat in your chest and deciding to raise your voice, versus feeling that same warmth and consciously choosing to take a breath. Modern brain science echoes this ancient wisdom, identifying a precious pause between a trigger and our response. It is in this space that our freedom resides. Consider a moment of frustration while driving. Another driver moves suddenly in front of you, and an immediate wave of irritation washes over you. That is the first movement, entirely natural. The Stoic practice is to observe that wave without immediately agreeing with it. You notice the tension in your hands on the wheel, the quickened pulse, but you do not let that impulse become a full blaze. You take that one breath, creating a buffer, and in that pause you reclaim your command. The other driver's action was outside your control, but your reaction in the next few seconds is entirely within your domain. Think back to a time when you spoke sharply to someone, perhaps a family member or a coworker. Can you recall the initial trigger and the immediate gut feeling that followed? Now, imagine if you had inserted just a single moment of deliberate silence between that feeling and your words. That small, conscious space is where you build the fortress of your mind, learning to watch the storm clouds gather without letting the storm define you. Seneca did not just wait for trouble, he invited it into his mind for training. This is the core of a powerful Stoic exercise known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. It sounds like a challenging practice, a form of serious reflection, but its true purpose is the exact opposite. It is a method for building profound psychological resilience. By consciously and calmly rehearsing potential setbacks in our thoughts, we drain future hardships of their shocking power. We are not practicing fear, we are practicing courage. In his letters, Seneca directly advises his friend Lucilius to periodically practice simplicity in his mind. He should spend a few days wearing his roughest clothes, eating the plainest food, and sleeping on a simple bed. The goal is not to experience hardship, but to discover a vital truth through direct experience. He writes that you will understand that a person's peace of mind does not depend on fortune, for even when she is angry, she allows us enough for existence. This mental rehearsal reveals our own deep capacity for endurance. It shows us that we can handle much more than we assume, and in doing so, it fundamentally weakens our anxieties about change. Imagine applying this to a common modern concern, the possibility of a career transition. The Stoic approach is not to obsess over this with dread, but to set aside a few quiet minutes to consider it deliberately. You would picture the event happening not to amplify the worry, but to calmly walk through the steps that would follow. You would realize that your skills, your relationships, and your fundamental ability to adapt remain entirely intact. The shift in a professional role does not mean the loss of your resourcefulness. You mentally untangle the event from the difficulty your mind has attached to it. You see the challenge, and you also see your own latent strength waiting to meet it. This exercise transforms your relationship with the things you value most. By mentally letting go of your possessions, your position, or even your closest connections for a moment, you come to appreciate them more deeply while simultaneously loosening their grip on your happiness. You realize that your core peace is not held hostage by external conditions, so take the next 2 minutes, bring to mind a professional change you sometimes think about. Now, with a calm and investigative mind, walk through that scenario. If that happened, what would you do first? What inner strengths, like your perseverance or your ability to learn, would you call upon? What support systems do you have that would still be there? This is not an invitation for worry, but a discovery of your own unshakable foundation. You are not predicting the future, you are fortifying your mind for whatever it may bring. One of Rome's richest men wrote extensively about the freedom of wanting nothing. Seneca, a man of immense personal fortune, argued that the path to an unshakable mind is paved not with acquisition, but with reduction. He saw firsthand how endless desires create endless points of vulnerability, like chaining your inner peace to 1,000 different posts, any one of which could be pulled away. A mind tethered to possessions, status, or specific outcomes is easily shaken by the slightest change in fortune. In stark contrast, a mind that finds complete sufficiency within itself becomes virtually unassailable. Seneca masterfully distinguished between our natural wants and the manufactured ones that trouble us. He wrote that natural desires are limited, but those born of false opinion have no stopping point. True difficulty, he noted, is not in going without, but in needing more. The anxiety we feel so often is not from a lack of something essential, but from the gap created by a limitless want. This ancient insight cuts directly to the heart of our modern experience. Consider the pervasive feeling of missing out, that subtle tension when scrolling through curated lives online. Each glimpse of a vacation, a purchase, or a celebration can quietly fuel a sense of our own lack. The Stoic antidote is not to condemn these things, but to consciously limit our exposure to the engine that fuels the wanting. Choosing to step away from constant social comparison or to pause before making an impulse purchase is not an act of deprivation. It is a deliberate training exercise for the mind. It is the practice of proving to yourself that your peace does not depend on that next thing. Your sense of wholeness remains intact. This week, identify one quiet desire you can consciously choose to limit or release. It might be the compulsion to check for notifications first thing in the morning, or the wish for a new piece of technology when your current one functions perfectly. Observe what happens in the space created by that conscious release. Do you feel a sense of lack, or do you discover a surprising sense of self-sufficiency? This is not about giving things up, but about reclaiming the territory of your own mind, building resilience from the inside out by mastering the art of wanting less. How much of your life are you actually living versus just preparing to live or letting it pass by? This is the piercing question at the heart of Seneca's most urgent work on the shortness of life. He argues with stunning clarity that life is long enough if we know how to use it. A resilient mind, he teaches, is one that is not frittered away on trivialities, but is fiercely protective of its most finite resource, time. We often feel anxious and fragile precisely because we operate under a constant, unspoken fear that we have no time. The meetings, the endless scrolling, the social obligations that leave us drained, all contribute to a quiet concern that our lives are slipping through our fingers. Taking conscious, deliberate control over how we spend our hours is not merely a productivity hack. It is a profound act of mental self-preservation. It is how we build a mind that feels expansive and rich rather than rushed and impoverished. Seneca writes with striking imagery about how people are busy with everything but living. He observes that life is divided between forgetting the past, ignoring the present, and fearing the future. When we live this way, we are not the owners of our time, we are its caretakers, managing a schedule that belongs to everyone but ourselves. This is why feeling time poor can be so deeply unsettling. It makes us feel like we are missing our very lives moment by moment. So how do we reclaim it? A powerful Stoic practice is to conduct a simple, honest audit of your week. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the center. On one side, list the activities that genuinely added value to your life, that contributed to your growth, your peace, or your connection to others. This might include an hour of deep reading, a walk in nature, a meaningful conversation, or focused work on a project you care about. On the other side, list the hours spent on distractions, empty obligations, or reactive busyness that left you feeling no more substantial than when you began. The goal is not to fill every minute with productive labor. Rest and leisure are essential. The goal is to see clearly where your life is being invested and where it is merely being spent. This clarity is the first step toward sovereignty over your time, so I challenge you to a brief but revealing calculation. Look back over the last 7 days. How many hours did you devote to activities that truly fortified your mind, that built your resilience, or that brought you a sense of authentic peace? The number itself is less important than the awareness it creates. That awareness is the foundation for a new kind of life, one not defined by its shortness, but by its depth. Hypocrisy is a crack in the foundation of a resilient mind, and Seneca knew it. He observed that the soul is most fractured not by external events, but by an internal civil war where our professed values do battle with our daily actions. This conflict, what we might call cognitive dissonance, is a quiet drain on your mental energy. Every time you say one thing but do another, you create a small internal fault line. A mind constantly negotiating this tension between belief and behavior is a mind perpetually off balance, vulnerable to the first strong wind of difficulty. True resilience, then, is not just about weathering storms, but about building a self so unified that there is no interior conflict for the storm to exploit. In his letters, Seneca presses this point with lucid force. He writes that philosophy is not a subject for occasional display, but for the consistent governance of your life. He argues that the person who has learned and absorbed the principles must have a life that corresponds to their words. It is a matter of harmony, not just knowledge. To know that patience is a virtue, but to live a life of constant irritability is to be at odds with yourself. This misalignment is its own form of persistent, low-grade stress. Imagine a person who genuinely believes in the value of calm and composure. They might read books on mindfulness and advise friends to stay peaceful under pressure. Yet, each day during their commute, they find their hands gripping the steering wheel, their jaw clenching at the slightest delay, and sharp words rising in their throat. This daily performance, this gap between their ideal self and their reactive self, creates a lingering sense of unease. They are not living in accordance with their own deepest understanding, and that disconnect is a constant, subtle tax on their inner resources. The resilient mind refuses to pay this tax. It seeks to close the gap not through perfection, but through conscious, gradual alignment. The strength you gain from this unity is far greater than the energy lost to internal conflict. So, bring to mind one area of your own life where a small crack might exist. Where do your actions subtly diverge from a value you claim to hold? Perhaps it is a commitment to health alongside inconsistent choices, or a belief in kindness that sometimes falters in a moment of stress. Do not judge the gap, simply observe it with curiosity. Then ask yourself this: what is one modest, achievable step you could take this week to bring your action just a little closer to your belief? This is not about a grand overhaul, but about the quiet, powerful work of making your inner foundation whole. Your mind has a gatekeeper, and Seneca's letters are a training manual for it. This is the profound Stoic discipline of assent, the final and most critical mechanism for building a resilient mind. It is the conscious choice you make to either accept or reject the initial impressions that flood your awareness. Every day, your senses deliver raw data, your thoughts generate stories, and your emotions present urgent claims. The gatekeeper's role is not to stop these impressions from arriving, but to stand at the doorway of your judgment and decide which ones you will let in and believe. Seneca advises us to suspend judgment the moment an impression first appears. Do not immediately agree with it, he suggests, but hold it at a distance and examine it with your reason. This simple act of pausing is the ultimate source of your inner authority. Consider the experience of receiving an ambiguous message, perhaps one from a close friend or a colleague that feels slightly distant or brief. The initial, involuntary impression might be one of concern, a story that you have done something wrong or that they are upset with you. This is the raw data arriving at the gate. The untrained mind, the one without a disciplined gatekeeper, immediately assents to this story. It accepts the most difficult interpretation as fact, and the entire emotional cascade of worry and defensiveness follows. But the resilient mind, trained by this Stoic practice, does something radically different. It observes the impression, names it for what it is, and consciously withholds its assent. You notice the thought, there is a story that this person is upset with me. You then bring your reason to bear. You might ask, what is another, more likely explanation for this message? Could they be busy, distracted, or simply typing in a hurry? By suspending your immediate agreement, you create a space of freedom. You are no longer a passive recipient of every mental narrative that appears. You become the active judge of what is true. Today, choose just one opportunity to practice being this gatekeeper. The next time an initial concern arises, perhaps about a work task or a personal interaction, consciously name it. Tell yourself this is just an impression, it is not yet a fact. Then, for a single moment, examine it with calm logic. What evidence truly supports this concern? What evidence contradicts it? This is not about suppressing your feelings, but about engaging your deeper intelligence before you decide what is real. You are not stopping the thoughts from coming, you are simply choosing with deliberate care which ones you will ultimately call the truth. Seneca suggested that we occasionally welcome small forms of discomfort as a kind of preparation for life's uncertainties. This is not about seeking hardship, but rather a thoughtful training for the mind. He believed we should show ourselves through direct experience that our sense of well-being does not depend entirely on our comforts. Fortune can be changeable, and what she offers is only temporary. To keep this in mind, Seneca would intentionally practice living simply. He wrote about setting aside certain days to be content with the plainest food and his most basic clothing. He did this to ask himself, is this what I once worried about? This was his method for learning that many of the situations we fear are actually quite manageable. The aim is to build a deep trust in your own ability to persevere, which helps lessen anxiety about what the future might bring. Consider it like a safety drill. We practice not because we want an emergency, but so that if one occurs, our response is calm and effective. Choosing small discomforts is like a resilience exercise for your whole life. A simple modern example is taking a cool shower. The first chill is a brief, controlled meeting with a feeling your mind naturally wants to avoid. By choosing to stay under the water just a little longer, you are not being harsh with yourself. You are sending a strong message to your mind. You are showing in a real way that you can handle unease without falling apart. You are demonstrating that your inner calm is stronger than a passing physical sensation. The same idea applies to occasionally skipping a meal, not from forgetfulness, but as a mindful exercise to notice the feeling of hunger and understand it does not direct your choices. Or deciding to walk somewhere you might usually drive, accepting a small inconvenience to build your flexibility. This week, I encourage you to pick one small, safe form of voluntary unease. It might be that cool shower, a simple meal, or a day without a usual comfort like social media or streaming. Do not see it as a test of will, but as an experiment in learning about yourself. Watch carefully what you feel after you finish. Do you sense a drop in energy, or do you notice a quiet, unexpected rise of inner capacity? That feeling is the beginning of a truly resilient mind. One that understands its own strength because it has been gently tried, not just in thought, but in real experience. How would the weight of your current worry feel from the peak of a distant mountain, or to your own eyes 100 years from now? This shift in viewpoint is the heart of another powerful Stoic exercise, often called the view from above. It is a deliberate technique for shrinking our troubles down to their true size, not by dismissing them, but by placing them within a vast and humbling context. Resilience, it turns out, is often just a matter of perspective. What feels like an all-consuming crisis from a close, personal vantage point can often reveal itself as a manageable, temporary event when seen against the grand backdrop of your entire life, or even human history. Seneca directly guided his friend Lucilius in this practice, urging him to frequently contemplate the whole universe and the immense span of time. He suggested that our personal affairs, when measured against the cosmos, are revealed as remarkably small. This is not meant to make our lives seem meaningless, but to grant us a profound and calming equanimity. The goal is to see your life as if from a great height, where the borders that define your daily struggles begin to blur and merge into a much larger, more peaceful landscape. Take a common source of modern stress, an overwhelming work deadline. In the thick of it, the pressure can feel absolute, as if the entire world rests on this single project. Now apply the view from above. Imagine yourself decades from now, looking back on your career from a place of reflection. From that distant point, can you even recall the specific details of this one hectic week? You will likely remember the overall arc of your work, the relationships you built, and the person you became, not the individual late nights and moments of tension. This exercise does not make the deadline disappear, but it drains it of its catastrophic power. You see it for what it is, a finite challenge within a long and rich life, not the definition of your existence. This mental zooming out is a tool you can use for any worry that feels too large. So, bring to mind one concern that is occupying your thoughts right now. Now, gently guide your imagination to pull back. See this single issue not in isolation, but as one small point in the long timeline of your life. Then pull back further. See your entire life as a single thread within the vast tapestry of human history, surrounded by countless other lives, each with their own joys and challenges. Does the problem feel the same? Has its emotional weight shifted, even just a little? This is not about avoiding your responsibilities, but about meeting them with a calmer, more resilient mind, a mind that understands the true scale of things. The final piece of Seneca's resilience blueprint is to fall in love with your fate exactly as it is. This is the profound principle known as amor fati, a love of one's fate. It asks for more than mere endurance of hardship. It invites a complete transformation of your relationship with every event in your life. To see each obstacle, each unexpected turn, not as a disruption to your path, but as the essential material of the path itself. The energy we expend fighting against what has already happened is a tremendous drain on our inner resources. It is like trying to push back the ocean with your bare hands. Embracing reality, on the other hand, turns that same resistance into fuel for your growth. While the specific phrase comes from a later philosopher, the spirit of this idea pulses through Seneca's letters. He advises his friend to welcome every experience, for even hardship is raw material for your virtue. He writes that the wise person will turn every circumstance to their benefit. A difficult person becomes a lesson in patience, a professional setback becomes a test of courage, a personal transition becomes a deepening of your capacity for compassion. Each event is presented to you as a kind of training, specifically designed for the development of your character. Consider the experience of a project that did not unfold as planned, perhaps a business idea that did not succeed or a creative endeavor that fell short of your hopes. The conventional reaction might be to see it as a pure disappointment, an outcome to be forgotten. The perspective of amor fati reframes it entirely. That experience was not a deviation from your journey, it was a required lesson. It taught you invaluable skills about planning, about your environment, or about your own creative process that you could not have learned any other way. It equipped you with a specific kind of wisdom that will directly inform and improve your next attempt, making that future effort stronger and more intelligent than the first could ever have been. The experience itself becomes a hidden benefit, a necessary step in your long-term development. So bring to mind one recent event you might label a frustration or a letdown. Now set aside the initial story of what went differently than expected and ask yourself a different question. Brainstorm 3 potential ways this very situation could ultimately serve your growth. How might it be strengthening a quality you need, like resilience or adaptability? What door might it be closing so that a better one can open? What false assumption about yourself or the world is it challenging you to release? This is not about finding a silver lining, but about recognizing that the entire cloud is part of your weather system, essential for your inner landscape to flourish. Seneca ended his days not with scrolling, but with a conversation with his most important critic, himself. He committed to a quiet, deliberate practice each night, a ritual of self-examination he believed was essential for a mind committed to growth. This was his evening review, a time to sit in thoughtful consideration of his own day. In his letters, he describes asking himself pointed questions, not to punish himself, but to learn. What habit have you improved today? He would inquire. What impulse did you resist? Where could your actions have been more aligned with your principles? This was not an exercise in guilt, but in clarity. It is the difference between letting days blur into a vague sense of busyness and actively shaping your character through conscious reflection. The goal is to catch the small errors in judgment, the minor surrenders to irritation or fear before they harden into deep-seated habits. A resilient mind is not one that never stumbles, but one that notices the stumble, understands its cause, and resolves to walk more carefully tomorrow. Think of it as mental hygiene, a way to tidy up the clutter of the day's reactions and reset your inner space. A modern adaptation of this is strikingly simple. Before you sleep, grant yourself just 5 minutes of quiet. Mentally walk back through your day from the morning onward. Look at your key interactions, your decisions, your moments of frustration or patience. Do this without self-criticism, with the neutral curiosity of a scientist studying data. When did you feel most centered? When did you feel your peace was shaken? The aim is to identify one single point of learning. Perhaps you noticed you were quick to interrupt a colleague, and you see that this came from a place of wanting to be right. That observation is not a failure, it is a victory of awareness. Now you have something specific to work with tomorrow, so tonight I encourage you to try this. As you prepare to end your day, ask yourself one clear question. When did I act with the most integrity today, and when did I act with the least? Do not dwell on the answer with judgment, simply observe it. That moment of honest recognition is where you begin to close the gap between the person you are and the person you wish to become. It is how you ensure that every single day, no matter how challenging, contributes a small, steady stone to the foundation of your mind. For Seneca, friends were not for networking or entertainment. They were fellow travelers on the path toward a good life. This is a radical shift from how we often view our connections today. In a world that prizes social followers and professional contacts, the Stoic ideal of friendship is something far deeper, a partnership in building character and resilience. A resilient mind is not a solitary fortress on a hill. It is a citadel strengthened by trusted allies who help guard the gates. Seneca wrote that we should live with a friend who can strengthen our judgment. He urged us to seek out those who will tell us the truth about ourselves, not just what we wish to hear. This is the heart of the Stoic circle of support, a relationship built on mutual growth rather than mutual approval. True friendship in this light becomes a form of shared strength. When you are caught in the grip of a difficult feeling, your own perspective can become clouded. A trusted friend, one who understands these principles, can offer a clear and steady viewpoint. They do not simply agree with your distress or feed your frustration. Instead, they help you separate what is within your influence from what is not. They gently guide you back to the solid ground of your own reasoned choices. Imagine you are facing a professional challenge. You feel you have been treated unfairly, and the initial impression is one of deep disappointment. You could share this with a friend seeking only sympathy, which might amplify the feeling of being wrong. Or you could bring it to a Stoic-minded friend, They might listen carefully and then ask what part of this situation is truly yours to command. Is it the other person's actions, or is it your own response? Their calm perspective helps you regain your footing, not by dismissing your feelings, but by refocusing your energy on the only arena where you have real power, your own decisions. This kind of friendship is a continuous practice in building a better mind. So consider your own closest relationships for a moment. Do they help you become more resilient and grounded? When you speak with these individuals, do you leave feeling stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your principles, or do you feel more unsettled and fixed in your worries? This is not a judgment on any person, but an inquiry into the nature of the support you receive. What kind of friendships might you need to cultivate to truly fortify your inner self? Partnerships where you can both speak the honest truth and help each other build an unshakable peace. Seneca considered anger a temporary madness, and his letters provide a step-by-step guide to avoid it. In his most direct work on anger, he does not simply advise us to suppress this feeling. He offers a complete philosophical system for understanding its roots and disarming it before it can take hold. His approach is not about bottling up emotion, but about seeing anger with such clarity that its appeal vanishes. He describes it as a form of voluntary suffering, a poison we choose to drink while hoping another person might feel its effects. One of his most powerful metaphors pictures anger as being like a falling rock. It breaks itself upon the very thing it strikes. The initial force may land elsewhere, but the damage, the fragmentation, happens first to the one who holds the anger. Your own peace of mind is the first thing affected. Seneca's primary strategy is to create a mandatory pause between the trigger and any response. He advises delaying your reaction, not for a long time, but for even a single moment. This brief interval is where your reason can reassert its command over the raw impulse. He suggests using this pause to actively try on the other person's perspective. Perhaps the person who spoke sharply in a meeting is carrying a burden of their own, a personal worry or a professional pressure you know nothing about. This is not to excuse poor behavior, but to drain the event of its personal sting. By seeing the action as a symptom of their own struggle rather than a targeted comment on your worth, you fundamentally change the story you tell yourself about what happened. The goal is to recognize the profound futility of the angry response. Seneca argues that anger is always more harmful to the person who experiences it than to the person it is directed toward. Think of a modern scenario where you feel a flash of heat from a perceived disrespect during a team discussion. A colleague dismisses your idea with a curt, unconsidered remark. The first movement is that jolt of irritation, the tightening in your chest. The untrained mind might assent immediately to the judgment, "They are trying to undermine me." This sparks the fire. The trained mind, following Seneca, catches that initial impression and postpones agreement. You take one conscious breath. In that space, you consider alternative explanations. Maybe they are distracted by a looming deadline. Perhaps they misunderstood your point. You see their remark not as a final verdict on your value, but as a data point in a complex day. This mental shift does not make you passive. It makes you strategic. It allows you to respond from a place of clarity later, perhaps by asking a thoughtful question, rather than reacting from a place of unsettled emotion in the moment. So bring to mind the last time you felt genuine frustration rise within you. Now, with Seneca's lens, look past the event itself and examine the internal judgment you gave your assent to. What was the specific story you believed to be true in that instant? Was it a story about intentional harm, about unfairness, about a wound to your dignity? And with the calm distance you have now, ask yourself, was that story the only possible interpretation, or simply the one that frustration demanded you accept. In a world that often glorifies constant activity, Seneca's insight feels more timely than ever. Beware the barrenness of a busy life. He noticed how people become occupied with life's many tasks, yet this flurry of motion can cleverly mask a deeper emptiness. There is a profound difference between simply being in motion and moving with clear purpose. A resilient mind is not shaped by reacting to every notification and external demand, but by selecting a single, meaningful direction and walking toward it with steady composure. Seneca offered a powerful distinction that speaks directly to our modern challenge. He suggested we must take care not to confuse mere activity with genuine accomplishment. A person can hurry through a day, their schedule full, their phone alight with alerts, and yet accomplish very little of true substance for their inner growth or their long-term aspirations. This is the illusion of constant busyness, and it feeds a quiet, underlying anxiety. When we fill our hours with reactive tasks, we are like a vessel without a guiding hand, moved by every wave of incoming mail, every shift in the digital stream. We sense the motion, and so we believe we are advancing, but often we are simply drifting on the current of other people's agendas. This persistent state of reactivity can soften our mental focus. Consider the common habit of reaching for your phone at the first hint of boredom or unease. That quick glance through a feed is rarely a true rest. It is frequently a way of turning away. It becomes a method to escape the quiet moments where focused work or thoughtful reflection might naturally arise. Each time we choose that diversion, we are teaching our mind to retreat from depth and seek the fleeting comfort of endless stimulation. We are gently lessening our capacity for the sustained attention that true resilience depends on. Purposeful action, by contrast, is intentional and chosen. It is the effort that resonates with your core values, the endeavor that builds a skill you truly care for, the exchange that enriches a connection. This kind of action does not deplete your energy, it often renews it. It strengthens your mind because you are living as the author of your own time, not merely a participant in someone else's crowded narrative. Tomorrow, before your day unfolds, identify the single most important task you could complete. Not the most pressing one, but the one that would bring the greatest sense of progress or calm. Then, make a simple agreement with yourself to guard a specific period for that one endeavor. When the inevitable busy interruptions appear, the messages and the requests, you will have a clear measure by which to consider them. Does this new demand align with my purpose for today, or does it draw me away from it? Your conscious decision in that small moment becomes a direct practice in building a resilient and centered mind. To build a mind that cannot be broken, Seneca advises we keep the thought of our own transition close at hand. This is the principle of memento mori, a remembrance of our own finite time. It is not a practice of fear, but of liberation. By accepting the reality that our days are numbered, we strip away the trivial anxieties that so often drain our mental strength. The constant, quiet hum of worry about the future loses its power when we turn and face it directly. Seneca wrote that each of us moves forward every day. For every day, a little of our life is taken away. He saw this not as a reason for sadness, but as the ultimate motivation to live with purpose right now. When you understand that life is long enough if you know how to use it, your entire relationship with time transforms. This meditation is a tool to intensify your experience of being alive. It forces a beautiful and urgent clarity. The argument you were rehearsing in your mind suddenly seems like a waste of precious energy. The longing for a different possession or a higher status feels hollow. What rises to the surface are the things that truly give life its meaning: your connections to others, your integrity, your capacity for kindness, the simple beauty of a shared meal or a quiet morning. This is how remembering your journey becomes a profound source of resilience. A mind that is no longer afraid of losing time is a mind that cannot be easily shaken by minor setbacks or external criticisms. To practice this, try beginning your morning not with a rush to your phone, but with a single, quiet moment of reflection. Acknowledge that this day, like every day, could be your last. This is not meant to induce panic, but to inspire a deep and focused appreciation. It asks a simple question: if this were truly my final day, would I be spending this hour the way I am about to? The answer is not about making grand, dramatic changes, but about infusing your ordinary moments with the weight of their significance. That morning coffee becomes a ritual to be savored, not gulped. The conversation with a family member becomes a genuine exchange, not a distracted formality. The work you do is chosen with greater care, aligned with what you feel is truly important. So I invite you to a brief writing exercise. Take a piece of paper and write down your answer to this. How would I spend today if I knew it was my last? Be specific. Who would you reach out to? What simple pleasure would you make time for? What concern would you finally release? Now look at what you have written. Identify one single element from that ideal day, perhaps a 5-minute phone call to someone you care about, or a walk outside to simply notice the sky, and make a firm commitment to incorporate that one thing into your actual schedule today. This small act is a direct application of Seneca's wisdom, a way to build a resilient mind by remembering what makes a life worth living. When was the last time you sat in complete silence with only your own thoughts for company? Our modern world is a constant broadcast of opinions, updates, and curated realities, a noise that can slowly drown out the quiet voice of our own inner guide. Seneca saw this challenge clearly, even in ancient Rome. He advocated strongly for regular retreats into solitude, not as an escape from life, but as the essential method for reconnecting with its deepest meaning. In one of his letters, he offers a thoughtful insight, stating that we must practice being in our own company. He calls this learning to be one's own friend, a vital skill for anyone seeking to resist the pull of the crowd and rebuild their inner resolve. Solitude is where you step away from the tumult of public life and remember who you are when no one is watching. It is in this quiet space that you can hear your own principles clearly again, away from the endless commentary of society. Consider the constant input from your phone, the news, and social streams. Each notification, each headline is a small tug on your attention, pulling you away from your own center. This external noise creates a kind of mental static, making it difficult to distinguish your own true values from the opinions you have passively absorbed. Solitude is the practice of turning down that volume, of creating a silent chamber where your own thoughts can finally be heard. It is not about loneliness, but about intentional aloneness for the purpose of self-restoration. A powerful modern application of this is the concept of a digital Sabbath, a designated period, even just a few hours, where you consciously disconnect from all screens and online inputs. Or on a smaller scale, it can be a daily 15-minute walk without headphones or a phone in your pocket. The goal is not to be productive, but to be present. You simply walk and allow your mind to wander, to process, to settle. You might notice the tension you carry from a morning conversation, or a creative idea might suddenly surface now that it has the space to emerge. This week, I invite you to schedule just 30 minutes of true, uninterrupted solitude. Find a quiet space, leave all devices in another room, and simply sit with yourself. Do not try to force any specific thought or achieve a state of perfect calm. The practice is to observe, without judgment, what thoughts and feelings arise when you are not distracting yourself. You might feel an initial restlessness, an urge to check for messages. Notice that impulse and let it pass. you might find concerns about the future coming to the surface, or a quiet appreciation for a small kindness. The act of observing these thoughts without immediately reacting to them is a profound exercise in reclaiming your inner territory. It is in these quiet moments that you recharge your inner strength, reminding yourself that your peace does not depend on the outside world's constant approval or entertainment, but on your ability to be a steadfast friend to your own mind. Nothing is inherently good or bad, Seneca reminds us, only our thinking makes it so. This is the heart of a practice that can reshape your connection to life's everyday moments. Resilience grows not by altering every difficult event, but by shifting the automatic labels we give them the moment they happen. When you call a situation bad, you hand it immediate power over your inner world. The Stoic approach is to pause that naming process to see what's happening first in simple, factual terms. In his letters, Seneca offers a clear example with wealth. He notes that the same riches can be a meaningful benefit for one person and a heavy burden for another. For someone with strong character, wealth becomes a means for generosity and creating new paths. For someone less grounded, it can lead to worry, excess, and personal decline. The money itself is neutral. It is the perspective and the nature of the person that gives it meaning. The event carries no built-in emotional charge. That feeling comes entirely from the story we decide to tell about it. Think of a common letdown, like a rainy day that changes long-awaited outdoor plans. The quick reaction is to call it a bad day, a spoiled afternoon. That label instantly brings a sense of frustration. The Stoic refrain is to drop the value judgment and see only what is true. Water is falling from the sky. Our plan to eat outside is no longer possible. With the idea of bad set aside, your mind can open to other paths. This same rain offers a chance for a peaceful afternoon of reading inside, or for the quiet, restorative rest you have been craving. The neutral event has not changed, but how you relate to it has shifted completely, and with that, your inner experience. This is how you cultivate resilience, by choosing not to let outside events control your inner atmosphere. So bring to mind one situation you are currently viewing as unfavorable. It might be a delayed project, a small misunderstanding, or a sudden shift in your day. Now try describing it aloud or in your thoughts using only neutral, factual words. Set aside all value-heavy terms like terrible, frustrating, or unfair. Just state what is actually taking place, as if you were observing quietly from a distance. What remains when the story of good and bad is gently laid aside? You may notice that the situation itself feels far more workable than the emotional weight you had placed upon it. Courage, for Seneca, is not a fearless heart, but a reasoned mind that tells the heart what to do. This is the vital distinction between the reckless bravery of impulse and the profound strength of Stoic courage. One is a temporary surge of feeling, the other a durable virtue built on wisdom. It is the judgment to act rightly in spite of the fear, not in its absence. A resilient mind is not one that never feels the chill of apprehension, but one that has learned to move forward while carrying that chill, guided by the steady light of principle. Seneca writes that the wise person will meet the challenges of life with a steady mind, without complaint. He is not immune to pain or difficulty, but he does not add to his burden by resisting what is necessary or by collapsing into self-pity. His courage is an act of endurance for a greater good, a conscious choice to bear what must be borne for the sake of integrity, duty, or the well-being of others. This is courage as a form of clear-sighted wisdom. Consider the profound courage required to initiate a difficult but necessary conversation with someone you care for deeply. The subject might be a pattern of behavior that is creating distance, or a truth that risks causing temporary unease. The emotional, reckless impulse would be to avoid the conversation entirely, to let the issue linger out of a fear of conflict or a desire for immediate comfort. The Stoic, however, recognizes a duty to act, a greater good that lies on the other side of that short-term discomfort. They feel the natural apprehension, the quickening pulse at the thought of speaking up, but their reasoned mind assesses the situation. It concludes that the long-term health of the relationship and the virtue of honesty outweigh the passing unease of the exchange. They then act from that reasoned place, not from a surge of emotion. Their words may be firm, but they are delivered with a calmness that comes from inner alignment, not from anger or blame. This is the courage that builds a resilient mind, one that can face internal and external challenges without fracturing. So bring to mind one hesitation that is currently holding you back from a meaningful action. Perhaps it is the worry of criticism that stops you from sharing a creative idea, or the concern over reaction that prevents you from setting a needed boundary. Now set the swirling emotion of that worry aside for just a moment and engage your reasoned mind. What is the one small, deliberate step you could take that would be in alignment with your deeper principles, even if it feels unfamiliar? Write down that single, reasoned step. The act of writing makes it a commitment, a signal from your conscious mind to your concerned heart that you are still the one who decides which path to take. While others complained, Seneca practiced gratitude, and he considered it a powerful form of mental armor. He understood that a mind constantly focused on what it lacks is a mind perpetually vulnerable, forever at the mercy of fortune's whims. In stark contrast, a mind trained to see and appreciate what it already possesses builds an inner citadel of contentment, a fortress that envy and disappointment cannot easily penetrate. A grateful mind is a content mind, and a content mind is less susceptible to the shocks of change and the poison of comparison. It actively disarms the feeling of scarcity that so often weakens our resilience before a challenge even arrives. In one of his letters, he offers a beautiful and practical instruction. He advises us to greet each day with a sense of thanksgiving, to approach each morning as if it were a wonderful bonus, a gift not owed to us but generously given. This shift from a mindset of entitlement to one of appreciation fundamentally alters our baseline experience of life. We are no longer waiting for the world to meet our demands, but are instead actively receiving the day with open hands. A powerful modern way to cultivate this is through a Stoic twist on the common gratitude journal. Instead of only listing obvious blessings like health or family, you intentionally include thanks for the obstacles that provided you with strength. You write down gratitude not just for the comfort, but for the difficulty that taught you endurance, not just for the success, but for the setback that taught you humility and clarity. This practice reframes your entire life story. The challenges are no longer mere interruptions to your happiness. They become the essential training grounds that built your resilience. Your past struggles are transformed from sources of pain into your most loyal teachers. So take a quiet moment right now. Bring to mind 3 specific things you feel grateful for in this very instant. The first 2 can be anything you choose, a simple pleasure, a person, a moment of peace. But for the third, I invite you to identify one recent difficulty or challenge and finish this sentence. I am grateful for this experience because it taught me. Perhaps it was a professional delay that taught you the value of patience, or a misunderstanding that deepened your capacity for clear communication. This single act of reframing does not erase the hardship, but it reclaims its power, turning what felt like a weight into a tool for your own growth. Our minds are often anywhere but here, and Seneca saw this as the source of much of our unease. We borrow trouble from a future that may never arrive, and we replay scenes from a past we cannot change, all while the only moment we can truly live in slips quietly by. True resilience, in the Stoic sense, is simply the capacity to meet the reality of the present with your full attention, without being fractured by what has been or what might be. The present moment is the only territory where your will has any direct authority. Seneca reflected on this human tendency with piercing clarity. He wrote that we are always preparing to live, but we never truly live. We postpone our happiness, telling ourselves we will be content when we achieve a certain goal or when a particular worry passes. Yet that future point, when it arrives, simply becomes another present moment filled with new preparations and fresh concerns. The cycle continues and life itself is deferred. The practice, then, is to reclaim the sovereignty of the now. This is not a complex meditation technique, but a gentle shift of focus to the immediate reality of your senses. Consider the simple act of drinking a morning beverage. Usually, you might drink it while scanning a screen, planning your day, or replaying a conversation from yesterday. The taste, the warmth of the cup, the simple ritual all go unnoticed. The Stoic exercise is to perform that same action, but with your full and undivided attention. For just those few minutes, let the drink be the entire world. Notice its temperature, its aroma, the feeling as you swallow. When your mind inevitably wanders to a future task or a past concern, gently guide it back to the sensory reality of the cup in your hands. You are not trying to stop your thoughts, you are simply practicing where you choose to place your attention. This is how you build a mind that is resilient to the pull of worry and regret, by anchoring it again and again in the one place where you are truly the sovereign. Today, choose one routine activity, something as simple as tying your shoes or washing your hands. Perform it with your complete and undivided awareness. Note the texture, the motion, the simple fact of the action itself. Observe what happens to the volume of your concerns when you grant your full presence to a single, ordinary moment. Do you look for your report card in the eyes of others? Seneca warns this is how you build a mind that can be unsettled by a single piece of criticism. Every time we seek our value in external applause, whether it is a like on a screen or a compliment from a superior, we are handing over the keys to our inner peace. We make our self-worth dependent on circumstance, something that can be offered one moment and withdrawn the next. Seneca saw this constant chase for validation as a profound weakness. He observed that the person who is praised by all is also the one who can be deeply affected by all. A resilient self-image cannot be built on such shifting ground. It must be founded on an internal scorecard, one that measures your progress not by promotions or praise, but by your own unwavering commitment to virtue and personal integrity. This is the only foundation that cannot be washed away by the changing tides of public opinion. In his letters, Seneca offers a powerful alternative to seeking judgment from the crowd. He advises us to retreat within ourselves to find a guide who is both kinder and more knowing. This inner guide is not swayed by popular trends or momentary moods. It assesses your actions based on a simple, steadfast question. Did I act with courage, with justice, with wisdom, with self-control today? Your honest answer to that question becomes your true measure of success, a metric that is entirely within your command. Consider an artist dedicated to their craft. If their sole focus is on sales figures or glowing reviews, their creative spirit becomes fragile. A single slow season or a challenging comment can feel like a verdict on their entire identity. But if that same artist learns to value their work based on an internal standard, the equation transforms. Their primary question becomes, did I honor my vision? Did I push my skills and express something true? Did I work with discipline and integrity today? The external results, the sales and the critiques, do not disappear. but they lose their power to define the artist's sense of self. They become data points, not report cards. The artist's core worth remains anchored in the one thing they fully control, their own commitment to the work itself. So take a moment for a quiet reflection. Bring to mind one area of your life where you sometimes find yourself anxiously checking for external validation. Now complete this sentence for yourself. My worth is not determined by, and then ask the deeper question that follows. If it is not determined by that, then what internal measure can I use to track my own progress and hold myself to my own highest standard? Seneca saw the universe as a flowing river, and he taught that resilience is the skill of swimming with the current, not against it. To fight the natural movement of life is a battle we are destined to lose, a constant drain on our energy that leaves us exhausted and far from our intended destination. The water will move whether we wish it to or not. Our only true choice is in how we navigate its course. The Stoics called this the doctrine of impermanence, the understanding that everything from our physical forms to our personal circumstances is in a state of continuous transformation. To expect anything to remain fixed is to set yourself up for a lifetime of quiet struggle against an unchangeable law. In one of his letters, Seneca reflects on this with stunning clarity, writing that nothing is stable, nothing is enduring. To one person fortune gives, from the same hand she takes away. This is not a cause for despair, but a fundamental key to inner peace. Acceptance of this flow is not passive surrender. It is an active and intelligent form of cooperation with reality itself. Consider a major life transition, such as a significant shift in your professional path or the natural evolution of a close relationship. The instinctive reaction is often to brace against it, to see it as a rupture in the story of your life. We build a wall of resistance in our minds, trying to hold back the waters of change. But the Stoic refrain is to see this not as a wall breaking, but as the river simply taking a new turn. The career that once defined you has reached its delta, and now the current is carrying you toward a different landscape, one that may offer new forms of growth you cannot yet see. The relationship that has enriched your journey has left its mark on the soil of your character, and its natural evolution makes space for new connections or for a deeper relationship with yourself. This perspective does not negate the natural feelings of sadness or uncertainty, but it places them within a larger, more comforting context. You are not being punished by chaos. You are participating in the same universal rhythm that governs the seasons and the stars. So bring to mind one area of your own life where you feel a subtle tension, a place where you are quietly resisting a natural change. It might be a new responsibility you are hesitant to embrace, a fading interest in an old hobby, or a shift in a family dynamic. Now, instead of focusing on how to stop this change, ask yourself a different question. What is one small, manageable action I could take this week to begin flowing with this current, rather than straining against it? This could be as simple as having an open conversation you have been avoiding, or dedicating an hour to exploring a skill that aligns with this new direction. This single, conscious step is not an admission of defeat, but a powerful declaration that you are a skilled swimmer in the river of your own life, ready to move with its wisdom and discover what lies around the next bend. For Seneca, every exercise, every letter, every practice was aimed at one ultimate prize: wisdom. This is the final and most vital piece of the resilience blueprint, the master virtue that harmonizes all the others. Think of the disciplines you have explored, from managing your initial impressions to embracing your circumstances. These are not separate techniques for solving isolated problems. They are the individual tools in a single workshop, all dedicated to the patient, lifelong craft of building a wise character. A resilient mind is not something you build separately and then possess. It is the natural, unshakable state of a mind that has learned to see the world as it truly is and to respond from a deep well of understanding. Seneca paints a portrait of the wise person that is both inspiring and profoundly attainable. He describes this individual as entirely self-content, finding a rich and lasting joy within, a person whom fortune finds no opening to affect. This is not a person without feeling, but one whose happiness is not held by external events. Their peace is generated from an internal source, a clear and reasoned understanding of what truly holds value. This wisdom is the compass that guides every decision, large and small. It is the quality that allows you to correctly judge what is genuinely good, like your own integrity and virtue, what is genuinely challenging, like confusion or error, and what is ultimately indifferent, like wealth, reputation, or health. With this compass, you can navigate any situation. The delay in your travel plans is not a catastrophe, but a neutral event. The difficult conversation is not a threat, but an opportunity to practice courage and justice. Your reaction to praise or criticism is not a reflexive grab for validation, but a measured consideration of what, if anything, you can learn. All the practices you have learned serve this one overarching aim. The discipline of assent trains your judgment to see impressions clearly. The premeditation of challenges strengthens your trust in your own capacity. The limitation of desire clarifies what you truly need to be whole. Each one is a step on the same path, leading toward a mind that is not only tough, but truly wise. So take a quiet moment to define this for yourself in your own life. If you were living with greater wisdom in your daily routine, what would that actually look like? Would it sound like a calmer tone of voice in a moment of frustration? Would it appear as a more deliberate choice about how you spend your next free hour? Identify one single, concrete action you can take today that aligns with your personal definition of a wiser life. This action, however small, is not just a task to be completed. It is a conscious stitch in the fabric of your character, a direct contribution to the ultimate goal of an unshakable and peaceful mind. We have laid out the individual bricks of Seneca's blueprint, and now we see how they lock together to form the unshakable house of the mind. This is not a collection of random tips, but a single, interlocking system. Your morning decision to practice the view from above gives you the perspective needed for the discipline of assent when a difficult email arrives. Your evening review of the day helps you spot where your desires may have overreached, strengthening your resolve for tomorrow's premeditation. Each principle supports the others, creating a resilient whole far greater than the sum of its parts. Seneca himself described philosophy not as an idea for public display, but as a daily medicine, something to be taken consistently for the well-being of the soul. It is a dynamic practice, a continuous adjustment and realignment, not a one-time fix. Imagine a day lived within this framework. You wake and take a moment to remember the gift of the morning, a practice in gratitude and mindful reflection. When a sudden change to your schedule appears, you feel the first movement of frustration, but you use the pause to withhold assent, examining the impression instead of being consumed by it. You see the change not as a personal offense, but as a neutral event, part of life's natural flow. Later, faced with a desire for an unnecessary purchase, you recognize it as a manufactured want and consciously choose to limit it, reinforcing your inner self-sufficiency. In a challenging conversation, you call upon the courage to speak from principle, not from reactive emotion. And as the day closes, you sit in quiet solitude for your evening review, not to criticize yourself, but to learn from the day's alignments and divergences, preparing your mind for the next. This is the Stoic system in motion, a comprehensive approach to building a life not of passive endurance, but of active, intelligent peace. So I leave you with a simple, powerful invitation. Look back over the principles we have explored. Which one single idea resonated most deeply with you today? Was it the power of distinguishing what is within your control, the practice of examining your impressions, or the courage to embrace your circumstances? Choose just one, and for the next 7 days, make a conscious commitment to practice that single principle with deliberate focus. Watch what happens not in your external world, but within the quiet architecture of your own mind. This is how you move from understanding the blueprint to laying the foundation of your own unshakable self. Seneca's blueprint for an unshakable mind is not locked away in a forgotten library. It is a living system, a set of mental disciplines you can start applying this very hour. The journey through his letters reveals a single, transformative truth. Resilience is not a gift given to a lucky few, but a structure you build from the inside out, brick by conscious brick. It is the power to command your judgments, to choose your perspective, and to find your ultimate freedom in the unwavering practice of virtue. The mind that masters these arts becomes a fortress without a single vulnerable wall. Seneca himself offered a final, powerful promise to those who walk this path. He wrote that a mind thus grounded is a citadel, for a person has no fortress more impregnable into which to retreat. Your inner peace, once discovered, cannot be taken from you. The outside world will continue its unpredictable dance, but you will no longer be a leaf tossed in its wind. You will be the steady trunk, deeply rooted in your own reasoned understanding. So the most important question now is yours to answer. With this blueprint in your hands, what is the very first small step you will take today to begin constructing your own resilient mind? Will you pause before reacting to a single message, examining the impression before you let it in? Will you spend 5 minutes this evening in quiet reflection, learning from the day's events without self-judgment? The choice is yours, and the journey begins with one conscious action. If you found this path valuable, consider subscribing for more practical Stoic wisdom. And share your own first step in the comments below, so we can all learn and build this unshakable peace together.